The Pedagogy of Learning. Thinking is learning and learning is thinking. Let's reflect on this simple phrase. How do we learn and how do we think? Did you really at some point ask yourself how you think and how you learn? Perhaps you have learned or must have identified how you learn by citing your learning styles. You can be auditory, visual, or kinesthetic learner. But how about the way you think? Is thinking a process of learning? Can learning take place without thinking? These are quite intriguing and difficult questions to answer. None of the many organs in our body is as mysterious as the brain. For centuries, we have had varied misconceptions and misunderstandings about how the brain works, grows, and shapes our ability to learn. The human brain is the center of thinking activities. We can explore a body of knowledge in medicine, neuroscience, and cognitive psychology to understand what exactly is happening in the brain when we engage in thinking. Thinking takes place in the brain, and generally speaking, we connect thinking as an activity that occurs in the brain. If one has a brain damage, thinking and other psychomotor activities stop to function properly. Sometimes we also describe a person as brainy when we consider his intellectual or cognitive attributes. So when we engage in thinking, we use our brain. But what exactly is happening inside the brain when a person is thinking? From the point of view of a computational neuroscientist, King, the brain is a multi-layered ecosystem of hierarchically organized neurons, circuits, networks, and brain areas. The neurons emit pulses called spikes that last about 1 millisecond. Each neuron emits a spike on the order of 10 times per second. King describes the troubles and the interactions between and among these neural spike signals through an extensive multi-layered feedback loops and in synchronized oscillating firing patterns. Thinking, though poorly understood, involves interactions between signaling pathways that are carrying information about the world and neurons that are representing information in working short-term memory. The neural circuits representing working memory seem to do so by a sustained firing until they are deactivated. And amidst the battle of neurons and spike signals, decision-making comes out to be a winner-take-all process where many different neuron clusters representing alternate action choices compete by inhibiting each other. Evidence supporting each action choices increasing the spiking activity of the neurons representing the choice. These neurons inhibit the neurons representing other choices, leading to a multi-way competition among neuron clusters until the final choice is made and the winner is declared. This description of the activities taking place in the brain when we think is quite technical for us to understand and to have a clear picture how the brain works. King, however, claims that this description is based on the current theories and models about how the brain works. But to date, almost none of them have been proven yet. From the camp of psychologists, how do they define thinking? Some of their thoughts about thinking are expressed in the following. Thinking is the activity of human reason as a process of strengthening the relationship between stimulus and response. Thinking can be interpreted to remember something and question whether there is a relationship between what is intended. Thinking is processing information mentally or cognitively by rearranging the information from the environment, and the symbols are stored in the memory of his past. Thinking is a symbolic representation of some event, train of ideas in a precise and careful way that began with a problem. This is according to Psychological Review 2011. To study further about the human mind, cognitive psychologists develop different models to represent how the thinking works. One of these models is the so-called information processing model. In this model, the mind is like a computer where thoughts and memories are chunked into smaller units of knowledge. When information enters the mind through the senses, it is then manipulated by the brain and decides what to do with the information. Some information triggers an immediate response. Other units of information are transferred into long-term memory for future use, according to Cherry of 2016. Another noted cognitive psychologist believes that thinking is conscious and is active. It is a cognitive process that can make connections and create meaning. It is dialogic and it is linguistic. He claims that language is essential for thinking. The term learning is practically part of our everyday language, be it in school, workplace, and everywhere. When we use the term learning, we usually refer to any observable changes in behavior, skills, and attitudes and perceptions. As pre-service teachers, I assume that you have acquired sufficient knowledge and understanding of the concept of learning. Hence, our discussion in this particular lesson may serve as a short review to enhance your current views about learning. Lackman noted that most textbook definitions of learning refer to learning as a change in behavior that is due to experience. He said that this simplistic functional definition is what every teacher seems to bear in mind when we define learning. But learning within the realm of educational psychology is a step-by-step process in which an individual experiences permanent, lasting changes in knowledge, behaviors, or ways of processing the world. I ask you to answer the activity wherein you will find what kind of learner you are, because there are several ways people learn. Each person prepares one type of learning over the other. One learning scholar once said, "The greatest mistake teachers all over the world commit is treating all students in the classroom as having the same learning style and learn at the same rate." You can therefore imagine a teacher who applies one type of learning to about 40 students in one class. What will happen? Children are great imitators, especially in their preschool age. They learn by observation. This is one type of learning educational psychologists refer to as observational learning. This is learning not as a result of our own experiences, but by simply watching or observing around us. For example, when we teach our younger siblings kung paano sumayaw ng chikading, na song na tinuturo natin sa nursery and kindergarten. 'Di ba? We will dance chikading in front of them so they will mimic. So that is observational learning. Another type cited by educational psychologists is cognitive learning. which is learning through active and constructive thought processes, such as using our memory. A Russian scientist named Pavlov studied that learning takes place through conditioning, and there are two types of learning by conditioning. The first one is called classical conditioning, which is learning by associating a particular object around us and predicting or anticipating what will happen next. The best example of classical conditioning is the famous Pavlov study about the dog. The bell and the food, illustrating the association of the ring of the bell with the food and the action of the dog. This author is sure or familiar with this study, as you have already taken this in your previous courses in teacher education. Learning through classical conditioning, therefore, is our reaction to an environmental cue that informs us what's going to happen next. The other or the second type of conditioning is the operant conditioning. This type is associated with the principle of reward and punishment. Any particular positive behavior gets a reward and negative one receives punishment. Students normally choose to keep doing behaviors that receive rewards than choosing to do behaviors that are followed by punishments. Understanding the learning styles of the students is crucial for every teacher, both in pre-service and in-service. Learning style is an individual preference on how he learns best. For several decades, we in education seem to focus on the three major learning styles, namely visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. The latest findings show that there are actually 7 styles of learnings. And if you have studied the multiple intelligence theory of Howard Gardner, we can rightfully claim that these 7 learning styles were rooted from the multiple intelligence principles. According to Mantel, the following are the 7 learning styles based on their intelligence. The first one is linguistic. This type of learner loves to read, write, and tell stories. They tend to memorize places, dates, names, and trivia very easily, and are always mesmerizing you with their incredible tales. They have a remarkable ability to repeat back everything you have ever told them, word by word. These students learn best by saying, hearing, and seeing words. Engaging them in script writing and video production can meet their learning styles. The second one is logical. These are the mathematically inclined learners. They seem to think and explain things in numbers. They are logical thinkers and straightforward types of learners. If you are into K-drama right now, like me, so you will see that Dosan on Startup is a logical learner. They continuously ask questions on how things work and how things relate to one another. This type of students learns best by categorizing, classifying, and working with abstract patterns or relationships. Use of exploratory environment instrumental software provides learning opportunities to address the styles of learning. The third one is spatial. These are visual learners. According to your activity that I have asked you to answer kanina, most of you are visual learners. So here you are. You enjoy dreaming, watching movies, and staying as far away from reality as possible. You are very good at working with colors and pictures and using the mind's eye. You love to play with educational computer games because they are visually presented. They think and process information in terms of visuals. Hence, they are categorized as visual learners. Use of simulations, videos, and educational games can support this particular learning style. The fourth one is musical. These learners learn best through rhythm, melody, and music. They prefer to study with a background music. These types of learners are best at noticing details, pitches, and rhythms that escape the normal listeners. They are excellent at keeping tune and are adept at turning the abstract into concrete objects. Their learning style is expressed in rhythms and music. Hence, use of interactive instructional software in developing musical pieces can enhance their creativity. The fifth one is bodily. These are the physically active learners. They love to move and walk around. So if you have students who cannot sit down for a long time, maybe they are bodily learners. They prefer to play sports or engage in an activity that requires physical movement rather than sitting, listening, or reading books. They enjoy field trips as they learn geography and explore nature. Use of exploratory environment instructional software can work well with this learning style. Number 6 is interpersonal. These are what we called the social butterflies. They can easily adjust to any type of social situation, win many friends, and can become excellent leaders. They are generally known as peacemakers because of their skills to mediate conflicts and settle disagreement in a group. Hence, they learn best in collaborative learning groups as they love to compare, share, relate, and interview other people. Collaborative virtual learning can address this learning style. Intrapersonal is the last learning style. This is exactly the opposite of interpersonal. These are the strong-willed and independent learners and learn best alone. They follow their interests and have a deep understanding of themselves. They can stand out from the crowd without even trying. They are the strong and silent type. They do best in self-paced instruction and individualized projects. Use of tutorial software can work well with their styles of learning. The above description of the 7 learning styles provide teachers the full understanding how students vary in their learning styles. Every student in your class may manifest 2 or more of these learning styles, and therefore, you have to be sensitive and creative in addressing their learning needs. That is why in every learning styles that I discuss, I've given you the special or the specific type of technology or instructional software that can best support these learning preferences. In integrating technology in the teaching and learning process, the first and foremost consideration is the understanding of how people learn. In any way we define it, technology is the application of the science of learning.